our third in a series, if you will. Today we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to do pulled pork, and if you do not like pork, you can also do the exact same thing with beef. Use a chuck roast. It's very standard. It's very Southern to do pulled pork. I like pulled pork. It smokes well. It was hard to find, but I got it. But you can also do chicken. We've done this with chicken as well. And if you prefer chicken, you can do it as well. So really 3 meats or 3 proteins that you can do with it. We're doing pork butt or pulled pork. You can do a chuck roast for shredded beef. Works just as well. Or you can also, if you'd like, you can do chicken. So with this pulled pork recipe, I'm going to make some tweaks. I sent the recipe out, or Brenda did. I'll give Brenda credit for sending the recipe out. So the recipe you have in front of you, and it's a recipe that starts out pulled pork. Now, there's some variations to this recipe, and there's a reason why. When I do this type of cooking, I have a tendency to smoke it. So last night, when I picked up the pork butt, which actually took a little bit of ingenuity in shopping. Thursday click list didn't have it. Sunday didn't have it. So all of a sudden I started panicking that by Friday I wasn't going to have a pork butt. But I went to Lear's Meats. Thanks be to God, masked up, got a small pork butt. When I got it home at 3 o'clock, I made basically what's on this recipe, which is brown sugar, chili, paprika, garlic powder, salt, black pepper. If you like it a little spicy, cayenne pepper. And I also I add an ingredient in my pulled pork called caraway seed. Now, why do I use caraway seed? I like it. To me, caraway seed and pork are like peanut butter and jelly. I can't usually do a pulled pork or a pork butt without some kind of caraway seed. I even do some sauerkraut too, but not in this recipe. But I really like caraway seed and pork together. So I added some of that too into my mix that basically gets all mixed up in one bowl. And once it's all mixed up, I will pat on the protein, which today is the pork butt, and basically encase the entire pork with this salt, sugar, chili, caraway seed mixture on both sides and even on the corners. It totally gets encased. I let it sit for anywhere from a couple of hours, which my time only permitted me to do that this time. I have wrapped it like the recipe says and put it in the refrigerator and taken it out a little bit before I'm either going to put it in the oven or slow cooker, or for this recipe, I let it set for a couple of hours. Then I smoked it for 5 hours. That is why my house right now smells like a Texas barbecue, which is a good thing. I love this smell. After I smoked it from 5 o'clock last night until about 10:30, I brought it up from my smoker downstairs, and I put it in my crock pot. And I put it on my crock pot slow. Instead of putting it in the oven as this recipe calls for, I felt a little bit safer sleeping by putting the 3-pound pork butt in the slow cooker with a little bit of chicken stock, and I let it work its magic overnight. Pork butt has a lot of toughness to it. If you just took the pork butt, sliced a piece, and cooked it in a frying pan, you would find it to be rather tough. That's the tissue made up of this protein, this muscle. By smoking it and then putting it in a slow cooker, you break down that muscle, and by doing so, you make a very tender product that finishes up very, very well. So that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to step over here, grab the pork butt, and then I'm going to turn the camera down to what I'm doing. For today's class, today's tool is a thing called bear claws. That's the box. These are the pieces that I like to use. This was a gift from my family for Christmas. They always like to get me something cooking related, and this was some barbecue accessories. What I like about this bear claw is it's a meat handler. In other words, I'm going to literally take it, pull it out of the slow cooker, put it onto the tray that I'm going to shred it in. And once I shred it, I will use these claws as well as a lifter out of the pot, but also as a way to shred the pork. I'll also show you how to do it with forks as the recipe calls. But this is the pulled pork recipe. It's from the pioneer woman, Ree Drummond. She's on the Food Network. She's usually on Saturdays and Sundays out on her ranch. Yes, a little trivia question. She has the 23rd largest land occupation of any person in the United States. Her and her husband have a great cattle ranch on that land, and that, in case you're ever asked, trivia question, she is the 23rd largest landowner in the United States. So let's pull the pork off and get it out of the slow cooker. Once I get it out of the slow cooker, I'll move it over to the display and I'll show you what I do as far as shredding the pork. Once we're done with that, then we'll move into the second portion of things. I'll show you a coleslaw. The reason I like the coleslaw is on my pulled pork, when we serve it at our house, we always have pulled pork or shredded beef, and then we put a coleslaw. I'm going to make today KFC's recipe for their coleslaw, or a variation of it as very close as I can get. So bear with me as I step away from the camera to get things going. Brenda, if you'll confirm that I've got this on camera.
Yes.
Is that good?
Oh my gosh.
Oops, too far?
It's great.
Good. Now, iPhones and Samsung have done a great job of enhancing the phones. The one thing they're missing is the smell. This is wonderful.
Oh, it looks great.
Now, I did add an extra step of smoking it, but you can, if you like, add liquid smoke. Not everyone is privileged to have a smoker as I am. I have a couple, actually. I like to smoke a lot. So you can utilize liquid smoke in place of the smoker if you like. So here's the claws that I was talking about, and it basically just shreds this meat apart. And you're just, see how you got that protein just shredding apart. One of the things you're going to see also is this large bone. This was part of the makeup of the pork butt, but when you smoke it, you know it's ready when it comes off and falls off like that. So I'm going to set these bear claws aside. Yes, that's this month's tool, but basically show you that you can also do this with forks. All you're doing is, see how easy this shreds apart? You cannot do this with a fresh pork butt. It has to marinate. It has to season. For me, it had to smoke, but it also has to sit in a slow cooker. This recipe calls for 300 degrees. I have had some that have slow cooked for 7 hours at 250. The meat was partially cooked after it came out of the smoker yesterday, but as you can see, it just shreds real easy. And this is the protein that makes up the component of your product. So as you can see there, it's, my little dog is barking. He's not so little, but sorry about that. He's not happy with the guys outside. So there's shredded pork. Still on the screen, Brenda?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna move this away. Basically what you're gonna do is you take this shredded pork and you put it in a bowl and you add the final ingredients. If you cooked it with onions and you like onions in your ingredients, you can do that. But basically the last step is to put it in there. You can make homemade barbecue sauce, or you can take your barbecue sauce from a bottle. I use one of two. I either use Sweet Baby Ray's original, or I use Montgomery Inn. Both I like equally as well. And I think it makes for a great sandwich. And you just add in portion to the pulled pork, and once you're finished, you'll have a great sandwich ready to go. I'm gonna set this aside and we'll assemble the pulled pork sandwich here in a minute. Suddenly my dog is very interested in what I'm doing. I think it might have to do with the pulled pork. All right, so let's move on to a component, and I think it's a very important component. It's the coleslaw that goes on your sandwich. Now I've sent you two additional recipes through Brenda. One is the KFC coleslaw copycat recipe. I really like this one a lot. I make a substitution. I like mayo versus Miracle Whip. So does my family. But also, if you like, you can go with another recipe, which is done by Robert Irvine, who's also on the Food Network. When he does it, he uses mayo. But today we're going to use the copy. All right, I'm going to set the recipe there so I can watch it. So what you want to do here is you want to make two bowls. The first bowl is going to be the recipe bowl for the mixture that goes over top the coleslaw. This is either Miracle Whip or mayo. I prefer to use mayo in this recipe. Now I'm going to show you a little difference there too. My executive producer just did a drive-by. This is Duke's mayonnaise. I use Hellmann's, I use Duke's. Duke's is more of a southern recipe. Why people like Duke's more than they like some of the other, like Hellmann's or some of the standard Kroger bought, is that Duke's puts in some extra egg in the mayonnaise, and they also put in less sugar. So it's less sweet, and it's more of an egg-based component. So there's your Miracle Whip or mayo, and then I use Duke's, which works obviously very well. Now, Duke's has less sugar, but you still put sugar in this recipe. It still calls for that. It calls for a half a cup. So put in a half a cup of your regular sugar, granulated. Then it calls for vegetable oil. Calls for tablespoons. Now just remember, tablespoons is the big one of the two. And I just pour away 1, 2, 3. All right, so there's your, now we went from tablespoons of vegetable oil to teaspoons of cider vinegar. Now, I love cider vinegar. It's one of my favorite components in cooking. This recipe doesn't fall short of it, but you're doing 3 of those. surprisingly, I have found rather difficult to find apple cider vinegar. So there it is. I'd like to thank my executive producer for finding it. But once you put that in, you've made some of the major components. You want to do some celery salt or plain salt, whatever you prefer. I pretty much know what a half a teaspoon is in there. So now you have the components together, and in this large bowl, all you're going to do is you're going to mix what will be the sauce for the coleslaw. Got a nice bite with the cider vinegar in there, and then it fluffs up a little bit with the mayo component. Now this recipe calls for finely chopping 8 cups of cabbage, getting a couple carrots out and doing that as well, and then finally chopping an onion. We're not going to do that. We're going to jump right ahead into, thank you Kroger for doing the shredding for me. So there's Kroger coleslaw. They were nice enough to make me 8 cups ahead of time. So all I'm going to do is cut up the shredded cabbage and the shredded carrots and the shredded onions, put that in the big pot. Some of it didn't shred very well. I'll get rid of those. And this is your base. So once you have that, you just pour the dressing over top. That smells good. And all you do then is just mix. Believe it or not, this is one of those recipes kind of like marinara sauce. It tastes better the next day, but I'm going to be mixing and having this today. Anybody wants to drive by, they can come by for a sandwich. I'll have little bags out in front of my house. But as you can see, just consistently cover all the cabbage and all the carrots in this coleslaw dressing, and you're all set. So we've got the coleslaw completed. That's all ready to go. And then let's assemble our sandwich. We've got the barbecue beef. I'm going to grab something and I'll be right back. Yeah. I don't know if you can hear from the background. My executive producer just asked me if I was making 2 of those. So she must want this instead of what she was going to have lunch for. All right, so here's your sandwich. Now, what have I done here? I really like, when I'm making a sandwich, to choose very specifically my bun. Now, this one has sesame seeds, kind of like what McDonald's Big Mac has, but it's nice. You have onion buns, you have this bun, but it really adds a little bit to the taste. So I always enjoy and appreciate a good sesame bun. So first, take some of this wonderful smelling shredded pork and put it on.
Gary, I think you have an order. Somebody just said 20 sandwiches to go for the office.
Okay, I might have quite almost enough. Almost enough. All right, so there's your beef, or there's your pork, and you can also use beef. Now, I'm going to put a little bit of barbecue sauce on this, and the reason I'm doing that is I'm not mixing the whole thing up right away. But there's some barbecue sauce, and then you just add on your coleslaw that's freshly made. See how pretty that is? Boy, I tell you, that is, there is something about that. Boy, I tell you. little bit of, just a little touch of black pepper. Love pepper in my house. And then you put it on the side like that, and that's how you serve it. Kind of brighten it up a little bit. And there is your barbecue sandwich. So
Outstanding.
there we go. Shredded pork, shredded beef. You're not going to believe this. I just got a text over my phone. Somebody wants a recipe for my Jarlsberg dip and how I do my onion. I'll get back to her. All right.
That was great. That was great.
All right. Questions?